Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. I hope you all are doing well. I've got a bit of a different episode for you, and by different, I mostly just mean unscripted. Just because, I wanted to sound a little bit more like how I would normally sound if the cameras weren't rolling, if I wasn't recording any audio. And so I thought it would be fun. And something that, I like doing with, like my friends, my loved ones, is just hot takes. Which I don't think I have too many hot takes, but regardless, just the whole hot take concept is just a very, very interesting conversation. And so I figured I would just read some hot takes and just give some of my thoughts. And I initially researched a lot of this, and I didn't really like any of the websites I found online, but Pinterest had a bunch, basically a list of hot takes, and I'm just gonna start reading off the ones I have an opinion on one by one. Here we go. The first one is music today is not as good as it used to be. I feel like people like my parents, for example, they would agree to that. Wow, I'm going to disagree. I feel like music is very, very creative today. I mean, it's always been creative, but I think it's taken another level of creativity today that wasn't there, or I should say, not everyone had in the past. Not to say that people in the past with their music, like before I was born, not to say that they weren't creative, but I think today having social media definitely helps, a lot of music artists, whether it be some of my favorite or not. I do feel like, anyone could have benefited, whether it be, people in the 80s, 70s, whether you're going from like, let me think, like Snoop Dogg, for example, Tupac or Biggie, or if you're gonna go back to like the Beatles or Michael Jackson, yes, I get it. I just named a bunch of different kind of people, but my overall point is, I feel like social media, like technology, has kind of helped elevate the creativity, just because there are people who sit and watch music videos of certain songs, and you couldn't do that with everybody because obviously the technology was not around. So I think the creativity today is definitely higher. And plus, my bias might just be because my favorite era of music is the 2000s, because that's what I grew up with. But I think that it's better today, mostly just because some of my memories, like for example, whenever I would go to Wisconsin Dells as a kid, I always remember some of the music that was played. I remember, playing Pop Warner football, some of the walkout songs for teams. Um, I remember listening to Wiz Khalifa, like around that time when he was, starting to get bigger with like Black and Yellow, Roll Up, or Young, Wild and Free, some of my favorite songs to this day. And so, yeah, I think music is better today, but I'm not saying it's drastically better. Um, Moving on to the next one, remote work is less effective than office work. I disagree with that 100%, because I feel like with something that I do, like the only thing with I cannot do here at home compared to at my job is using my voice like I'm using it right now. By that I mean there's some sounds that I can't block out here, like Nala and the other animals here, but at my job, that's better equipped to handle blocking out some of that noise. And so a lot of work is, also technology based. And so, like, if I have to write down on a piece of paper, then like, okay, I probably cannot, I probably need to be in the office for that. But for at least with what I do, it's just as effective, because you can send stuff online. Like, yes, it's easier for certain elements, like if you need to ask for help, but I think that is entirely dependent on what you do as your career. Because if you're a doctor, yeah, office work, being in the back room helping patients, that's that's no doubt going to be more helpful. But if you're somebody who uses technology, or maybe if you live in one state, like if I live in Illinois, but maybe if I had a remote job in like Florida, remote work is going to be way more effective because I don't have the ability to uproot my life and go move to Florida right now. All right, so moving on to the next one, handwriting should still be taught in schools. I do think it should still be taught, even though that the world today, as we know it, technology is becoming even more prevalent. And I would not be surprised within the next, we'll say 5 to 10 years, is that, notebooks in schools become kind of obsolete. And by obsolete, I mostly just mean that they're not really used as much. Me, I was a journalism and communications major, and I relied on notebooks. You can ask anyone I went to school with, whether it was somebody in the same year or below. I often had a notebook. I didn't always use it just because there were certain classes where I could not keep up with the lecture with writing notes, but I can keep up with typing. But I feel like I studied better having that handwritten material just because I'm reading something that I wrote compared to something that I typed. So that always helped me. And also, I have good handwriting for a guy. A lot of guys that I know, whether it be through people I grew up with or people that I went to college with, their handwriting looks like chicken scratch. And so I feel like being able to read handwriting, it should be taught in schools more. And that's just referring to like print, like writing your name normally. I'm not referring to cursive. Cursive, I'll be honest, I cannot read most cursive. Like when I was, I think around 9, 10, me, my brother, and my dad, we went to a football camp with the 1985 Bears. And I don't remember all of the 1985 Bears that were there, but I got the autographs of a lot of them. I cannot read a single one of their signatures. I have to ask for help reading it. And it's not because I don't know how to read, obviously. I just cannot read their cursive. So, it is what it is with that. So I do think handwriting should still be taught because there are certain things that I feel like in this world that you just cannot completely eliminate. There will always be people who, use like paper to some extent because I think I remember one of the studies saying that if you write something down, you're more likely to either A, remember it, or B, kind of, do it. And, also me with my schooling, I used to always forget my homework. My mom and dad are going to love this part of the podcast. I was the type of student who I would do my homework, but I'd forget to turn it in, whether it be because I lost it or I just never did it. So my parents, one day, they just had enough. Fourth grade, my dad, I believe he got home from work. I was sitting in the living room at his house. Not in the living room, I was sitting in the kitchen in his house. He did not say a word. He sat down at the table. Actually, before he sat down at the table, the only words that he was saying is he handed me a small notebook. And he had said, every day while you're in class, you're going to write down the subjects, your math, your sciences, English, so on and so forth. You're going to write down each assignment that your teachers give you, and you're going to write down a little box to check mark it so that when you're doing your homework, you're going to finish it. After he gave me that notebook, I wrote down the homework that I had. He sat at the table, which maybe for about an hour or so, because I think that's how long it took me to do my homework at the time. Sat down for the entire hour. I did my homework, and then the thing that he stressed the most: put it in the bag, which I did. Turned it in the next day, and I took that system and ran with it for the rest of my educational career. Whether it be through me writing it down, which also in college I bought planners to help me in college remember some of my homework, or using technology in a similar fashion, I basically made like a Google Calendar send notifications to my phone. And if I try to ignore them, it's going to continue to repeat until I just can't, take it anymore. So I just was like, okay, I got to do my homework. The next one on the list is professional sports players are overpaid. I do agree with that. I agree with that, especially because people like nurses and teachers, they are very underpaid. Even though that I am very passionate about sports, considering that I also was an athlete, they are there for the entertainment, and yes, the work that they put in, they deserve the money that they get. I'm not saying that professional athletes shouldn't be paid pennies. I'm just saying that society, at least in America, should raise the money that teachers make and nurses make, because I don't think there's certain like I know baseball players get paid a lot of money, and I get it. They're playing over 100 games a season. Basketball players make a lot of money. I don't know what hockey, NHL, type salaries are, but also football players make a lot of money. They get hand out contract extensions often, and so yeah, I think if people like nurses and teachers were paid more, considering the work that they do, nurses, saving the life, like nurses, doctors, the medical field, saving the lives of many, many people every day. They're able to keep us walking to enjoy our families. And also, I'll extend the medical field to veterinarians because they are a part of the medical field. And, dogs, cats, other animals, they are still a part of our families. And so they do what they can to make sure that we can go back to seeing our families to whatever extent possible. That's why I think they should be paid more. So if, teachers and people in the medical field were paid more, then I wouldn't have as much of a problem with athletes being paid what they did. But because that gap is so large, that's another thing. And moving forward to classic literature is boring. Feel like that's a broad subject to even tackle. Yes, it's gonna bore me, so I will agree with that. Um, but I feel like for people like maybe English professors, or like creative writing professors, they will disagree with me 100%. It's just not my thing. Um, I was never really one to read a lot in college or high school. I had a tough time doing stuff like that because with me in the reading that I would like to do. And no, I'm not even just referring to manga because anybody who says, Jaren, you like anime. I've never read manga. I've read a few chapters of certain stuff, but I've never sat and read a whole series from chapter 1 to chapter 100, however many chapters a series has. So, yes, classic literature bores me. I'm not sure if people like Shakespeare or Edgar Allan Poe are technically considered classic literature. If they are or not, their stuff still bores me. Um, but I'm not taking it because they're both very, very talented individuals. So I'm not going to take that away from them. It's just classic literature as a whole. It just does not interest me. It's just not for me. I'm sorry. The next one, the concept of marriage is outdated. I'm only 23 years old. There's a couple people in my life, that I know that are married, that are my age, or they're engaged. This probably be the one I have the least amount to say as of right now. All I can really say is marriage is not for everybody, just like college is not for everybody. Like maybe going into military services is not for everybody. So I think marriage is just entirely dependent on yourself. I think I'm not in a state of mind where I'm thinking of marriage on a day to day. I'm more so thinking about what's the next food I'm gonna eat or the next video game I'm gonna play. Hi Nala. Um, Going on to the next one, reality is better than fiction. That's already kind of vague, um, because I'm wondering if they're referring to something like nonfiction, like a nonfiction book or a movie like a documentary. But taking the words at face value, I'm going to disagree with this. I do like documentaries. I think they're great. Um, but I think I like fiction a little bit more just because, a lot of people look for escapes from reality. Like for me, one of the things I do, video games, sports, which I get it. Sports is a very political topic, but I don't. I think of more as just the enjoying them aspect when I'm watching sports. So a lot of people look for escapes from reality, no matter how big or how small the escape. So I'm going to like fiction more. I think it's better, and but I also do think people need to be realistic and at least be aware of the reality of maybe our actions or the reality of the world or just in general, just reality as a whole. So I don't think reality is better than fiction from maybe an entertainment standpoint, but I do think it's important to stay rooted in reality however we can and find our escapes whenever we can and as when it's appropriate. The next one, animated movies are not just for kids. I'm a huge anime fan, so I am going to 100% agree with that. Like, I'm gonna be somebody when I'm older. If anime is still a big thing, I'm still going to be an anime fan. And if I have kids, I want my kids to at least watch some of the stuff that I watched as a child. Like I watched SpongeBob, some of the animes that I watched. Um, I watched The Fairly Odd Parents, Avatar: The Last Airbender. That's just me naming some cartoons. Um, but I mean, if I go to animated movies, Studio Ghibli, or is it Studio Ghibli? Regardless, I haven't seen as many of those movies, and I need to catch up. Howl's Moving Castle and Spirited Away were both amazing movies. I loved them both. Um, and the thing is, I saw both of those movies in my 20s, and I get it. I'm just 23, but they are not. I feel like a lot of the animated movies that people would have watched, they might be like 40 years old now and, still love animated stuff. Like, for another thing, Scooby Doo. Scooby Doo has been around since before my parents were born. I think Scooby Doo first kind of came around in the late 60s, give or take. And Scooby Doo still has been rebooted a number of times, whether it be through cartoons or movies. It's been around forever. And also, even thinking about Disney, for example, Disney has a long history. like there's another Pixar movie coming out. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's something to do with a boy wanting to be abducted by aliens. Um, Again, there's gonna be a bunch of adults who go and see that movie. Um, yeah, no, animated movies are not just for kids. Animated movies are for everybody. And if anybody tells you different, send them my way. The next one on the list are social media influencers are the new celebrities. Ugh, I don't know how I feel about this one. I disagree because, like, yes, there are a lot of social media influencers. I don't think I count as an influencer just yet, but I mean, I do have my own podcast, so maybe I'd call myself a social media influencer on a smaller scale. But some of the big people that you see trending, like, don't get me wrong, I will admit that they have a level of famous aspect to them. But I don't know. I guess maybe it's just what society has placed on me or my definition of a celebrity. I don't really view a lot of the people I see on like TikTok as celebrities. Like for example, um, I won't view somebody on TikTok, which again, the people on TikTok, regardless of where they are, they put in a lot of work to get what they have, and I'm not trying to knock them down. Um, I guess with me versus say somebody you'd see in a movie, I mean, I can agree that yes, there are two different kinds of celebrities. I just feel like celebrities as a whole is just a broad topic. So I'm not one to argue and say that social media influencers are not like if you think there are celebrities, you think there are celebrities. If you don't, you don't. It's one of those things where I don't care, but also, I can't believe everything I see on the internet. So um that's kind of why I don't want to just flat out believe. And I get it at the same time, you can't believe everything in a movie. Like, so I don't know. I don't know. That one's a tough one to answer. I'm leaning towards social media influencers are not the new celebrities. Yeah, hi again, Nalo. The next one. Physical fitness is overemphasized in society. Yeah, no, I disagree with that 100%. It is not. If anything, I feel like it's not emphasized enough. Like, yes, there are a lot of people who go to the gym regularly, and I need to start getting back in better shape. I need to start. Um, but I feel like, with fast food in general, a lot of people eat fast food every single day, maybe all their meals a day. And I believe America is still, almost at still dealing with people who are overweight. And a lot of that is connected back to fast food. And I think exercise as a whole, I'm not saying that you need to exercise enough to be jacked like, a boxer, a football player, just or certain movie stars. I'm not saying you need to exercise enough to get that ripped. And I think just physical fitness is something that you should be able to maybe walk up a flight of stairs and still be okay. Like, I'll use Gillette Central for reference. I think right now, today, if I was to go walk up and down Gillette Central, I wouldn't be able to do it as well as I did it when I was in high school. And that's me being out of shape. So I think there are millions of other people who around the world or even just this country who are probably in a place like me who you're not the most out of shape, but like we need to put the work in. And I think that, big part of that starts with what we put in our bodies. I'd say most of the food that people put in their bodies on a day to day is not healthy, but I will also say that there are worse options to choose when it comes to certain fast food places that we go to. So, moving on, we're almost halfway through the list. I'm gonna skip that one. This one. Most advice about success is useless. I disagree. I feel like the thing about advice is, yes, there are certain people you want to take advice from, and there are certain people that you don't want to take advice from. But I think just with advice in general, it's based off of two things: the person who's giving it to you, and your willingness to truly think or accept the advice they're giving you. So whether it's about success or not, I think if it comes from a person who is successful, maybe they have a six-figure job, or maybe using my profession, maybe they have one of the top podcasts in the world, and maybe it's just somebody who's giving back, some knowledge and say, hey, this is how you can improve your podcast. Um, I think that's type of advice would be very, very useful. If there's somebody with a huge podcast out there in the world and that listens to mine, if they have any advice, please let me know. And also, at the same time, even if you don't have your own podcast, if you ever have any advice for me regarding the state of this podcast or just for me in general, I will always be willing to listen because you never know where the your next good idea can come from, or you never know, just how helpful somebody can be regardless of who they are. Skipping down another one is fast food is as good as restaurant food. I disagree with that. Yes, there are certain restaurant foods that maybe don't taste as good as certain fast foods, but I think as a whole, fast food is not as good as restaurant food. And my question is, when you say good, I'm guessing you're referring to the taste. If you are, I still disagree with you. But if you're referring to like just how healthy they are for you, then you might be right to an extent. It all depends on, you know, what you're eating. Like if you're gonna use McDonald's versus I don't know, like 5-star Michelin restaurant, I will go to that 5-star Michelin restaurant. Like 10 out of 10 times, just because I've never been to a restaurant that fancy before. Um, so regardless of if you're referring to the taste, I disagree 100%. But if you're referring to like how healthy or unhealthy the food might be, you're onto something. But I think it just depends on the place itself. Where they get the ingredients from, whether it's grown locally, and a lot of foods being injected with certain things that are not good for the human body, or just like in general, like just other things that maybe like certain seasonings or how something is cooked. It's just very unhealthy. Um, Moving on to the next one, AI will eventually surpass human intelligence. I want to disagree with this despite what the movies would tell us. And again, that's just movies. I need to learn more about AI in general. Like I do have a pretty decent knowledge of AI as a whole, but obviously I don't know the most about it. There are other people that I know that, know more about it than I do. But I don't want to outright say yes and or no to this. I'm just going to leave. This is the one where I'm truly neutral on this. The next one, the customer is not always right. I 100% agree with that. I've never worked in fast food. I've never worked at a place like McDonald's. I never worked at a place like Chipotle or Mr. Sub. Mr. Sub is a Joliet place for those, who don't live in Joliet. But the fast food workers, the people that just come in and antagonize the workers are just insane because there's stories online with, adults going in and basically verbally attacking like a 16-year-old over maybe their order was wrong or maybe they didn't get the correct change back. And I'm like, that's just a 16-year-old kid and you've lived, twice this person's lifetime. And that's just, I don't have a specific example for it. And, I feel like fast food workers put up with the most BS. It's something that I cannot do as a person. Not because, like, I don't have the thickest skin, but I don't have the thinnest skin either. I'm in the middle. But I just think that for me, what you have to deal with as a fast food worker and the customers that you have to put up with are not worth it. And there are, yeah, like the signs where it says the customer is always right. I 100% disagree with that. 100%. Like, it's just so unfair how, restaurant, fast food employees are treated just because, or in which, the customer's always right extends to a lot of different other examples. But it just, in my mind, it just came to fast food specifically, just because those are the examples I hear the most about people dealing with customers. The closest I ever came to, dealing with customers like that, which is I had a job as a waiter, server, like waiter, server, in high school, a little bit in college. I only had one bad incident, which I am not going to refer to it on the podcast. Those of you who know, you know. Um, so my next one will be modern technology makes people less creative. I disagree. I disagree because of stuff like social media and podcasts. I feel like social media, I feel like I see a ton of, people on TikTok, using their skills creatively. whether it come from even just the transitions that they do, or the concept that they do, or even just how creative a podcast might be. I don't think modern technology has made people less creative. If anything, you might be able to say it's made people less innovative, and even that's a reach because yes, they might not be the ones designing the app, that they use, aka TikTok in this example, but they're still very innovative because they have to be smart as like, okay, what transition works for this, or maybe the art that they might post. Because I see a lot of on my for you page, a lot of like anime art in general. So like they're combining modern technology with their own skill of like painting or drawing. The next one is listening to music while working or studying is distracting. For me, it's 50-50. It depends on what I was doing. If I was maybe working on a project or studying for a final, very distracting. But if I'm just doing like a simple Monday homework assignment for my Wednesday class that same week, not too bad. I feel like music definitely helped me relax instead of stress out, especially when I had, tougher classes. So if anything, it helped me relax. But everybody's different. So I'm gonna say that's 50-50. It depends on who you are. Well, to me, listening to music while working, I haven't tried it just because I work longer hours sometimes. I feel like for me, it would definitely be distracting, but that's just with my current job. With jobs in the past, it would not have been as distracting. Like when I was a server, I had some free time. I definitely have some music. I pop in my AirPod, like one single AirPod, and just keep it moving. Um, that's that. All public transportation should be free. I don't disagree with that. I've never taken a bus. I've been on a train once. But I mean, I feel like if all public transportation was free, it would help a lot of people around the world. So I see that only as a good thing. So I don't know how feasible it would be if it would make the economy go into an even greater debt that we're currently in. So that I have no idea, but I know yeah, I don't know what the cost of an average bus ticket or train ticket would be, but I know a train ticket would also probably have enough big effect on where you're going. If you're taking a train across the country, I mean, I imagine it's not going to be like a $10 ticket. Again, I can be proven wrong easily, but I mean, I imagine you're gonna spend you know, some money for let's just say like a 9 hour train ride. But again, let me know down below because I've never been on a train outside of the one time I've been on a plane. Long story short, for my 21st birthday, went to Pittsburgh for the Ravens and Steelers game, and that was my first time ever on a plane. And the day of the game, we took a train to get to the Pittsburgh Steelers Stadium. Um, so yeah. The next one is living in a city is better than living in the countryside. Again, I'm sorry, I'm not really outright 100% being like, oh, this is way better than this because of A, B, C, and D. Some of these are just truly 50-50 because I mean, like, for me, I don't want to live out in the countryside. I just don't really have those kind of vibes. Like, yes, I've lived in the suburbs my entire life. I I'm definitely not like a big city type of person. I could definitely say that as much at least. Like I kind of enjoy the area I grew up around in, whether it be through just the people that I've met, my family. So just the general vibe, I guess. But I'm not a big city person. But if I had to say, I'm definitely, I definitely would be a big city person than living out in the country. Um, but that also just might be because of my background in particular. So I'm willing to admit my bias there. So we're just gonna read a few more hot takes, just because we are approaching the 30-minute mark. No, I'm not going to read two anymore. Number one, homework does more harm than good in education. I disagree, even despite my background with homework. I feel like your homework will prepare you for a test, regardless of the subject. For me, especially if it was math, because math was the subject that I feel like was not my strongest subject. But, being able to struggle through some of the homework and then, you know, pushing through on a test and getting a good grade, that was always very helpful for me. So, yeah, no, I do not think at all homework does more harm than good in education. And especially since, like, if you're going to look at it from a number standpoint, and I get it, every school is different, homework was not as big of a part of a grade as like a final or a test. Specifically in high school and college. Most of my finals were never weighted that crazy, but um, missing a lot more. Missing if you do no homework assignments, but you take all of your tests and finals, I would bet you would probably fail the class, your average class. But if you're going to do, let's just say if you only miss one, maybe two assignments, but you take all your tests, homework is not going to do you all that harm. But it's all depending. For me, I'm going to say no. Social media should have age restrictions like alcohol and tobacco. I do agree with this. I'm not saying I would set this like for age like 21. There was a documentary that came out about Netflix with kid influencers, like basically people under the age of 18, and I have not watched it just yet. But essentially, a lot of parents who are the managers of their kids who are under the age of 18 have had a huge effect on a lot of children slash young adults' lives, and so I don't know if I would make the age restriction be 21. I would say certain social media should maybe have some sort of restriction. Maybe I wouldn't 100% place an age restriction. I maybe more so would place like a time restriction. And there are ways to get around age restrictions in general in regards to social media. By that I mean if you're going to type in the year you were born, if you're born in the year 2005, you might put that you're a few years older. That's what I meant by there are ways around the age restrictions for social media. And so um I think that, not like I got a phone when which again, even me saying this is privileged. I think I got a phone when I was in the fourth grade, but I didn't create social media until about the sixth or seventh grade. So I would have been about 13, 12, 13 at the time. And at the time, I didn't really use my social media all too much. I just used it for memes, 99% of why I use it today. So I think social media having an age restriction is not a bad idea. It just depends on how well it's enforced. Um, Movie theaters will become obsolete due to streaming services. I always loved the experience of going to a movie theater. I just saw the Minecraft movie a few days ago. Um, but I do think they're slowly dying because of streaming. Ironically, a few years ago for the Augustine Observer, when I worked at the school for my school newspaper, I did an episode about streaming, and that was a great episode. Um, but I will always love the experience you get from a movie theater. Um, I don't think they will become completely obsolete. Let's go through two more. Two more. We should switch to a 4-day work week globally. I mean, I feel like I've been hearing talks about it, at least in America, for a while, but I feel like it just, you hear the idea of it, but it doesn't really go much further than the idea. But I don't mind it. Um, I don't mind it. Hmm. Let's read maybe one more. Perfect one to end it on. Video games are a legitimate form of art. I 100% agree. Whether it's in regards to the graphics of the video game, whether it's in regards to the story, whether it's in regard to maybe the voice acting, it's an art. Now, even if it's sports, you're going to have, like the graphics, you're going to have the jerseys, you need to make it look like a team. If you're gonna, and plus there's face scans. Like I'll use the Baltimore Ravens because they're my favorite team. Lamar Jackson has his own face scan in Madden, and it looks pretty much you're looking at Lamar Jackson in person. The jerseys in Madden look just like the Ravens jerseys do in real life. The announcers sound just like the announcers do in real life. Um, and then also, the announcers they have a certain level of I guess passion or whether it's bringing too much energy or not. So that's that. So and then maybe just let's just go toward a story based game. You're going to have the voice actors, and if there's an emotional moment, you're going to voice actors. They're gonna voice act their butt off. They're gonna act their butt off. Um, and just overall designing the game, I do think it's a form of art. I think art as a whole is such a big topic that a lot of stuff can fall within the realm of what is art and what is not art. But I'm going to end it there. I just want to thank you all so much for listening to this episode. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, or just leave me a comment down below and share with me any hot takes you have. Thank you so much. Peace.